Okay, good day everyone. Eddie here, Risk Management Lecture of Think Education. As mentioned in our timetable, we are going to discuss the Module 3 in our learning journey to help you understanding the key points in this module. Okay, it's important for you to go through all the learning materials, and this presentation actually includes some of the key concepts only. So you need to find the details in your study guide. All right, now this is my favorite advice, the survival kits. Please make sure that you download the files. I believe you have done that. If you haven't done that, please immediately do that. That helps you to succeed the subject and go through each learning module and map the assessments, all assessments onto your personal calendar. And I'm thanking those who submitted the assessment 1 in week 4. And we are going to have the second assessment next week. And the last assessment, or assessment 3, is due in week 11. And if you need help, please contact me. And I believe so far I responded to your email or messages pretty fast. Most of the messages have been replied on the same day, in fact. Okay, and please also contact the Student Services Center if you need non-academic support. Okay, all right. Now, the objectives of the subject is again to understand the entire thingy, the entire risk management process framework, establish the risk context, identify risk, analyze risk, and also select and implement risks. Okay, assessment 1 is basically about to establish and identify risks, and your assessment 2 is basically to continue your journey with the risks that you have identified. We will analyze and treat it. Okay, so that's your assessment 2. Okay, all right. So for this presentation, we try to achieve the following objectives: understanding the key concepts of risk analysis and use the tools to analyze risk. Okay, now let's have a look at this one here. Okay, there are, in terms of conducting a risk analysis, there are 4 phases in the risk analysis. We identify existing controls. In here, we need to establish whether existing controls, the existing controls that we have in the organization are in place and they're working. If not, then we need to develop one. We need to get together and with the relevant stakeholders and address that, okay? Because this will be the foundation of risk analysis. And then we need to determine, okay, the likelihood of risk occurring and its frequency. Okay, the likelihood in here is the degree of possibility that risk events, that certain risk events may occur. Okay, and determine the consequence or impact, if you like, if a risk occurs. Okay, which is basically the degree of seriousness, if you like, of the issue, okay, or of the risk, if that happens. Okay? And the last one is to estimate the level of risk by combining consequence or impact and likelihood. So they are the 4 things that we need to do in risk analysis. Okay? The first one is to identify existing controls. We normally organizations would normally have that if they have the risk management process. So we need to look at the steps 2, 3, and 4. So they are the ones that you need to deliver in your assessment. We are assuming that you have got the existing control in place, and therefore now what you need to deliver for assessment is basically step 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now let's have a look at them. Okay, now analyzing likelihood. This represents the probability of a risk event to occur, right? How likely it is to happen. Okay, we normally write them from 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, or 1 to 100. Okay, so we can write a risk if the likelihood is very little, very unlikely. We may want to say it's 1. Okay. And if the likelihood is quite high, we may want to say, yes, it is 5. For instance, if we use 5 rating scale to measure the likelihood of a risk, right? And that means it is certain, right? If we say it is 5, then it is certain, right? It is certainly happening, okay? Let's say in real life, we normally look at some symptoms to claim why certain risk is considered as 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 if we use 5 rating scale. For instance, if we organize an event, a charity event, outdoor charity event, right? One of the risks that we anticipate is raining, for instance. If rain happens, then people will not come. Okay, that is the risk that we need to anticipate. Okay, how do we measure it? How do we measure the likelihood? Well, number of things that we can use. We can look at the weather. Right? We can look at, okay, it's cloudy. Well, it's going to happen. Okay, it's cloudy. It's very dark. For instance, we have heard some lightning. For instance, yes, it's going to rain. Okay. But if on the other side, if we find, if we look at the weather, well, it's bright, sunny day, okay, people feel it's very warm, for instance, well, the likelihood is quite little, okay, probably it's very unlikely. So we would write it as 1, okay. Some organizations adopt the 100 scale to be more sensitive. Rate it until 100 to be more sensitive. I'm referring, if you look at the project management body of knowledge, they look at the 100 rating scale. Okay, for your assessment, I would recommend you to use 5 rating scale, not 3. The reason why not 3 is because 3 is not that sensitive. You only look at low, moderate, and high. Okay, with 5, it is more sensitive. Okay. All right, this is what actually, this is what we mean by the rating scale. Okay, you can look at you can rate it the other way around, like 5 is the lowest and 1 is the highest. But normally we say 1 is the lowest, 5 being the highest. Okay, so from likelihood perspective, if we rate an event as 1, that means it is quite rare. The likelihood it happens is quite rare, very unlikely. Okay, 5, as mentioned to you before, if we write an event to be very likely, then we say it is or certain, then we say it is 5. Okay. Some organizations may use statistical analysis to look at the probability analysis in here. So, for instance, they estimate the probability using the statistical analysis. Okay. In the case of weather, for instance, we can also use data such as the weather forecast, for instance. Okay. Look at the number of data. As mentioned before, we look at the symptoms. We look at the data. Okay. And we predict based on the data. Remember, guys, risk assessment helps us understanding the future. We try to look at the crystal ball, right, in terms of anticipating the events that may happen and affecting, and these events will affect us, will affect our objective achievement. So we try to look at the crystal ball. Okay, when we look at the crystal ball to reduce the level of inaccuracy, we refer to data, we refer to people's experience or stakeholders' experience. Okay, for instance, if we are launching a new product and we put we say that one of the risk events may be the shipment of our raw material, packaging material, then we can refer to our stakeholder, hey, look, what is the likelihood this guy is on time? Well, likelihood is quite high based on the track record, based on our learning. The likelihood is quite high for them to deliver that, for instance. Okay, they're quite reliable, for instance. Our supplier, he is quite reliable, okay? Right, so that's likelihood. Some scholars also suggest the likelihood event. So they look at a number of elements here. Such if you look at this slide, for instance, you can also refer to your study guide. We have the initiating event, sprinkle system, call to fire brigades, and outcome. Okay, so there are a few other things that happen after the initiating event. Okay, fire. What's the likelihood? Yes and no. Okay, the fire happens at our venue, at our place. We can measure the likelihood, yeah, yes and no. There are two possibilities here. Okay, and then from each of them, we can also split into the same thing, like yes, no, and we measure it. We measure likelihood from here. Okay. Or we can also, still using the event tree, we can also measure that based on the probability, okay? Like this one here, loss of grid power supply, how much the probability is, say 98% or 0.98. Yes, we'll have that issue, okay? Now, 2%, okay? So diesel engine runs for required periods, then we have some likelihood as well. Well, almost 100% here, which is quite high. Okay, if that's the case, then we can continue the operation. Okay, so that's that tells us the likelihood level as well. Okay, from the event tree perspective, right? Again, you need to come up with this likelihood for your assessments, and you can rate them 1 to 5. Okay? The other technique to determine the likelihood is the consultation of the stakeholders. We discussed as the illustration I gave you before. We can discuss with the stakeholders. Say, look, mate, what's your feedback here based on the experience? Okay, and we can also consult the experts in their field. If there's no one in our organization is familiar with that issue, then yes, we need to discuss with the expert. Okay? Now, let's look at the consequence. In brief, it is about how bad it is if that happens. Okay, it can be expressed in terms of cost, working days lost, the other asset lost, or severity of an injury, and so on and so forth. Right. And again, we can rate them. From 1 to 5, again, I would recommend you to use 1 to 5 in terms of writing the consequence. Okay, 1 being insignificant, 5 being catastrophic. So if we say that the hazard in the organization is in terms of fatality or consequence or impact, we say it is catastrophic. It may kill someone. Okay. So to describe the situation, right? Again, we can use the decision tree to determine the consequence, how much the consequence would be. Here we say we have the development cost. If you refer to your study guide, you'll also be able to find this decision tree. Okay, outcome, projected sales revenue, and net profit. Okay, here we have the database ABC, and we can also look at the likelihood. Yep, 50% each in terms of success and failure. That's the outcome. And if we are successful in developing that database, we'll earn $1.2 million. If we fail, then that's it. We don't. we don't earn anything, and in fact we must pay the cost, $200,000. That means we are losing $200,000. Okay, and we also have we can also look at the other option, which is basically developing database B or database C. Okay, all right. So that's hopefully that's giving you an idea in terms of measuring the consequence. Now, the other techniques that we also can use is to consult the stakeholders and do some research, okay, to measure the consequence, all right? To measure the consequence. Okay, now, this is the main one that you need to deliver on your for your assessments. Okay, let's have a look at it further. Okay, this is a risk register table. We must deliver this. Okay, we must create this. Okay, for our assessments. Right, and here we are saying you can also refer to the templates available on your from the that you can download on the in the portal. Okay, so that this includes risk, likelihood, the impact or consequence, risk level, priority, treatment, and action plan. Okay, the action plan would normally include the goal, the person in charge, due dates, and the risk assessments. In terms of risk assessment, we expect new writing, and again we expect the priority level to drop. Okay. All right, now risk events. We discussed risk events in the previous module, and let's say we are launching the product and we are actually estimating risks, okay? We are actually estimating the risk, and let's say, what is the risk in here? Well, let's say in terms of launching new product, supplier does not deliver. All right, so we detail that does not deliver on time. What is the likelihood? Here we can use 1 to 5 rating scale. Okay, 1 to 5 rating scale. Okay, oops. What is the likelihood? Well, the likelihood is moderate, because we hear that there may be some the labor in there may have some strike. Okay, that's what we hear recently. Okay, and impact would be another 1 to 5. And if that happens, what will the impact? Well, if that happens, then a new product cannot be launched on time. Okay, what does it mean? Well, the impact is quite high, because we are losing $10 million, for instance. Okay, so it's 5. Okay. Risk level is actually the we multiply likelihood and impact. Okay, so 3 by 5, that means 15. Okay, so that's the level of risk, right? Okay, now we look at the next one, which is basically, let's say, competitor, right? Competitor may do some actions. Okay. What's the likelihood our competitors do action like reducing the price? Well, it's 2. The likelihood is drop, and if that happens, what will be the impact? Well, it's 4. Okay, because we can still launch the product. Yes, we may lose a bit of volume, but not as bad as if we can launch it on time. So the risk level is 2 by 4, means 8. Okay. Now, if you look at that from priority perspective, this since assuming we only have 2 risk events. Based on this, we find that this one here is higher, right? In terms of risk level, this one is higher than that one. Okay. All right. So let's say we have another risk. Okay. To make it clearer, competitors. Next one is supplier. Okay. Let's say the other one is key staff resign. Okay. Key person resign. Okay. What's the likelihood? 1. Okay. We haven't heard any thing. Okay, if that happens, what is the impact? Well, have we got the system working on? Yes, we do. We have this system working on the on this project as well. Okay, let's say the impact is moderate. Okay, and risk level is 1 by 3. Right, we got 3. Okay, so if you look at that, this one is the highest in terms of risk level. Okay, therefore it becomes our priority 1. And the next one is 8. So this is priority 2, priority 3. Okay, and we develop the treatment plan. Okay, how do we treat risks? Okay, that could be, developing a number of actions to options to deal with the supplier. Okay, so that's basically the ones that we need to develop in terms of risk analysis and risk treatment. Okay, all right. What are the next steps? Okay, well, look, do not get frustrated. Email me if you need help. And there's some students, sending me email, which is great, and appreciate that. I look forward to your email. And again, guys, please go through Module 3 and start the assessment, Assessment 2, which is due in week 7. Attempt all tasks, and contact me if you need help. Okay. Stay tuned for the next module.